Um, and then I started using diet pills. And about 3 or 4 months into that, I somebody I had known um, suggested amphetamines. I don't know, but math, yeah. And my first time of doing that, it wiped my brain. All that pain, it was gone while I was there. And I started using more and more and more. And within 6 months, I was doing something I'd never done before, which I had taken something and I was now taking my math like a diabetic. I don't know how else to say it without. And the first time I did that, I um, I really forgot all my pain, and I did it for about 2 weeks, 3 weeks, and I broke down to my boss. I begged for help. Um, I went to rehab, and I stayed for like 3 months, almost 3 months. And in that time, oh, my last day of use at that point, because I did continue to use it, something happened, but I had gotten Shigella and cellulitis. I thought I had OD'd, and I didn't, but I spent a week in the hospital before I went to rehab. With my first day of rehab, my mom, my sister, and my cousin showed up, and they had me sign over my house. My sister took over my finances, stopped paying for my car insurance, and I had a you pay here, you buy here kind of car deal. So as soon as the insurance stopped, they repoed my car. So I lost my house and I lost my car. And I stayed in treatment for almost 3 months. Got out, didn't have a place to go still. I got to spend one night with my mom. That first day out, my sister and my mom started pushing for me to go to a mental institution. Um, Having the history I have with my mom and fully knowing that, you know what, maybe I am in a psychological breakdown. However, I'm not crazy. And I, at that point, was so pig-headed and so frustrated that here a crazy woman's trying to tell me that I need to go to a loony bin, and I was not having that. And I had one night to stay there, and then I ended up moving into a tent out in the woods while I was waiting for my FMLA money to come in so I could find a place to live. And because the only person that offered me a place to go, because my friends disappeared, no one would answer their phones, nobody wanted to talk to me because of the substance I used. And the only person that offered me a place to live was the person I was getting my math from. But they did not want me using either. So I lived in a tent in the woods. I stayed dry because I wasn't clean. I was dry. In that time, I started bouncing around. After I got out of the tent, I went to a crisis center, found a place to live. Only for the day I got out of the crisis center, and I was on my way to get the money order, did I get a call from the guy who was facilitating me getting this apartment so I could get back to work. Where Allegheny County, unless you have a credit score of 650, they don't take you. And he told me that day that these people were not going to rent to me anymore. And I went to one of the only people that would take me in, which was another friend who had relapsed around the time I did. She used a different substance, the Big F. And she was suffering, and she offered me a place to stay, but said I could not use in her house. Understood. Being that I was emotionally completely broken, still having issues with, because I still hadn't dealt with, the assault. I'm in a house with people using F and H, and I'd never experienced that. That was never my, like, those were never my substances, and I didn't know what I was getting into. And I ended up in a space where I had a pew pew pulled on me several times by this guy, and I froze. I started freezing. My trauma responses were never freezing, they were always flying, like run, run. Oh, maybe that's not true. I froze a lot. But I froze. And at this point, like, I had my dog, and I just froze. I couldn't protect my friend. I did get out of there. I ended up in Weirton, West Virginia with a friend of mine, and I ended up picking back up because I ended up in a DV situation. He took all the money I had, used the baseball bat on me regularly, and I felt like I had nowhere to go. I had no one to turn to, and I was stuck. So I let it happen. At this point, I had both my dog and my cat, and I couldn't figure out where to go with them. I was there for about 3 months. I lived through that for that long. And the day my cat died, I picked up a machete, and I told him to never touch me again, and I left. And I did this thing that all math students do, right? I built a cabin out of tires in the woods. Had had a sectional couch and all kinds of stuff inside of it. I had pictures hanging up on the walls, because that's what insanity looks like for a math student. And I lived like that for a little bit. Ended up coming back home, moving in with that guy that sold me math originally, and he knew that I was already doing it, and I just continued. And I ended up meeting a guy who had just recently picked up, and I started doing this lovely thing called speedballing. My last day of use was 12/24 of 24, Christmas Eve. Christmas Day, I was still shot out, and I drove around with my dog in the back of the truck, in the back of a cab, and I drove to my family's houses. I drove to my friends' houses. I never got out of the vehicle, and I just sat in front of them and cried and said goodbye because I was going to unalive myself. I'd been up for maybe 2 weeks, something like that, maybe longer. And we went back to my guy's house, and I went to sleep in my room, and I woke up on New Year's Eve. I had no idea it was New Year's. No idea. But I know this guy that I was all about called and, asked me to come pick him up because he was not in a good situation. And I did. And he begged me to take him to rehab. And he said that, he put his friend on the speakerphone, and this girl was going to take care of my dog, and she was going to get us both and in Cincinnati. And we got off the phone, and I went to back up, and I backed up into some lady's car, which this is the universe doing me a massive solid as I'm sitting there having a breakdown, crying in the middle of the road, begging somebody to take my dog because I didn't want it to go to the pound. He was 14 years old. He was my life. He was the only thing that I seriously was living for at that moment. And some woman came up to me, and she knew my name. I have no idea who she is. I still don't know. But she knew my name. She knew who my sister was. She called my sister and begged my sister to come get me and take me to rehab. She called the rehab facility and got me a bed. Cops had showed up. They were not taking me to jail. They were taking him to jail, but they weren't taking me. And they said it was this is how I found out it was New Year's Eve. They're like, no place is going to take him on New Year's. And she was like, just let me try. And they did. And that was the beginning of my new life. My sister took my dog. Matt went to jail. He unalived himself that night. I didn't find out until June, after I got out of treatment. I went to a 28-day stay, which was, I didn't want to go because that's where I'd been previously and I had a bad experience. But this thing was going to set me on my synchronicities, all the things that I needed, all these things that lined up and told me about my life. One of the greatest parts of my life came from there. One of the greatest parts of my life came from there. It's kind of what led me here, where I'm at today. But inside that place, I had learned that I needed to just let other people make decisions. And I fought it because that's what we do. And because I didn't want to go to the place I went to after that. I just wanted to be somewhere with my dog. And that wasn't happening. And I ended up going to an extended program. I was in the gateway system where I had been 21 years ago. And they sent me up to a building to live for the next 3 to 6 months. That was right across the lawn from the place I had been 21 years ago, where I got clean and started a long track of my life of having a good life and getting the help and doing all the work I needed to do. I walked into that building, let them know that I'm not a 12-stepper and that I needed, because they said they offered everything, and which was not true. But I learned, the thing I learned inside of that facility was to self-advocate. And I'd done something that I had never done for myself. I literally stood up and fought for every little thing I needed. I started EMDR therapy because somebody else told me about it. And I was like, you know what? That's what I need to try. And then when I first tried it, I was like, oh my God, why did I do this? But at the same time, like, I've been doing it since March and I am now healthier than I've ever been in my life, mentally. And it's going to keep getting better because I'm going to keep working on it. Being there also allowed me to open my mind a little bit more. And even though I'm not a 12-stepper, I go to 12-step meetings because we need people. That's how we keep going. It's the group. It doesn't have to be the exact program because my program's different, right? I'm doing EMDR. I'm having a talk therapist, but I'm going to these meetings and I'm sharing my story and I'm hearing theirs. And you know what? I learned something from them and they can learn something from me. And that's an amazing thing. When I got out of the extended program, I went into a place that allowed me to have my dog. I lived in this apartment building that I knew was bad. I knew was filled with people, you know, hitting the rocks. But I kept to myself. I kept my head down. I kept my treatment. I went to meetings when I could. I got to start like communicating with that special something I got when I was in rehab.